Hey everyone, welcome back to this week's PC gaming news. I've barely done anything but play games this week, so it feels good to be productive again, yeah, as I sit here talking about video games. What is my life? This week I'll be telling you why all my time vanished thanks to New World's currently underway beta. We'll also take a close look at Ubisoft's super irreverent Tom Clancy's XDefiant, talk about the upcoming beta test for Elyon, recap the happenings of this year's Tennocon, and touch on the big, disappointing news from Blizzard. But before we dive into any of this week's topics, a brief word from our sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Perfect World Revolution. This is a mobile MMORPG with modern 3D graphics that features the ability to play in portrait mode, letting you experience every aspect of the game with one hand, while retaining the classic elements of the original Perfect World MMO. Some of the game's main features include fast-paced gameplay with top-of-the-line mobile graphics and smooth controls. You can switch between 7 different classes and the 3 classic races of human, untamed, and winged elf. You'll play on global servers to join guilds and battle alongside millions of players from across the world, letting you do things like wage massive wars in these cross-server dungeons. And like I mentioned earlier, you can play the game with one hand, interacting with the world, combat, running and flying. Everything can be done with one hand. So Perfect World Revolution is free to play, available now on iOS, Google, or the official site. And if you guys are interested, go ahead and check it out using the link in the video description below. And if you use my bonus code, you'll get some free goodies. Okay, so now let's go ahead and jump into this week's PC gaming stories. So first up, let's talk about New World's closed beta. It kicked off last week and gave us some time to jump in and try the game prior to launch. And I can tell you personally, these past several days have been a whirlwind of waking up early, playing for countless hours, going to bed, rinse and repeat. It's been a while since I've played anything nearly this ravenously, and besides a little regret from not doing as much work as I should have, I have mostly enjoyed the experience. Funny thing is though, initially I planned to take it easy during this test so I wouldn't burn out before launch, but despite a few issues, I've been having such a good time I haven't wanted to stop. I'd say there's a few reasons why, from what I can tell. For one, the world is just incredibly immersive. I remember this from the preview event, like between the visuals, lighting, the ambient music, and some stellar sound design, it really does feel like a living, breathing world that makes me want to just go out and explore. There have been countless occasions over this past week where I've stumbled across some new landmark, and the lighting and atmosphere were hitting just right, and it just made me go, damn, video games, yeah? On top of being immersive, the world also feels very alive. So we have these big servers, these big maps, and there's just people everywhere. The towns are packed with players looking to group up, selling items, and doing some crafting. And then from within the towns, you'll also hear nearby people chopping down trees and mining, which even further adds to the immersion. You're constantly knowing that there are people around doing things. And then as you go out adventuring and questing, there's almost always someone else in those areas to team up with, or maybe have some interesting interactions thanks to VoIP. The game's dungeon entrances have been packed with players as well, looking to just on the fly form groups. Really, this experience and this game has felt more MMO than any new MMO I've played in quite some while. I'd also say as well that the game's combat, while simple, can feel very satisfying once you get into it. You know, opening up with an attack, reading, and then sidestepping the enemy's counter, and then finishing him off with an ability or some light jabs. I found that there's almost a rhythmic element to combat in this game. It is simple, and it does have the animation locking, but I am familiar with that and comfortable with that from some other games that I've played, and I genuinely like it, even though, yeah, it is simple. And lastly, I'll admit I was wrong. Gathering and crafting is good. I like it. They've managed to make swinging an axe at some trees or picking away at rocks feel satisfying between the sounds, the animations, and even just that progress bar as it ticks away. I'm enjoying the crafting and gathering. In fact, hear me out on this. After thinking it over and putting it down on paper, I've had the realization that New World in some ways is delivering on the dream I've had for a Dark Souls MMO. No, the combat is not It isn't anywhere near the depth of Dark Souls, but the game having this massive, super immersive, connected world with no loading screens, and the fact that it's full of players and features this action combat system, albeit light, but still an action combat system, it is checking a lot of boxes of the game that I've imagined in my head that a Dark Souls MMO could be. It might be a bit of a stretch, but I'm telling you, it's in line with that, at least somewhat. All of that said, there are still plenty of legitimate issues and concerns with the game. Combat, like I said, is very, very simple. And for that reason, I could see it getting old for players who hope to sink in multiple hundreds or even thousands of hours. As much as I'm enjoying the rhythm right now, it's pretty bare bones in terms of diversity. Also, in terms of things being kind of getting repetitive, we'll talk about the questing system. It doesn't have much, it's not very interesting. Like, yes, most MMO quests are simply kill something, go here, or loot something, but most MMOs also tend to take you on a tour around the zone as they follow the story and then move on to the next one. They don't really do that in New World, and they don't even incentivize going to other zones. Like, there are multiple starter areas from 1 to 25, but you're incentivized to stay in one zone because of their territory reputation system, where you get more experience if you stay in one zone longer and you invest your territory upgrades, faction, whatever, territory reputation upgrades into a particular thing. Like, it makes more sense to just stay in one area and grind there and keep doing those same quests over and over again. That feels a little repetitive. I hope they really incentivize that I go to every single starter zone and check the whole thing out by following one thread all the way through. I also think there needs to be more activity variety sooner in the game. So the first dungeon is for levels 25, and for many people, it will take you upwards of 15 hours just to get to that point. The structured PvP doesn't even start until end game unless you get hand-picked to join in one of those territory wars. I also think some more enemy variety would be nice. Apparently the game melts video cards, so that's obviously not good. And cash shop is still a big question mark in terms of how exactly this thing is going to be implemented. What are the prices? We still are waiting to find out the specifics of that. All of that said, I am really, really loving the game right now. Now, I do plan to put together a video going in some real depth about my thoughts on the game, but to put it simply here, I'm very much so enjoying my time with New World. I do absolutely plan to hit this thing pretty hard when it officially launches. Like I said at the top, it's been a while since I've been this invested in wanting to play a game day after day. New World ticks a lot of boxes. It does a lot of things right for me personally, and I can't wait for the full launch. Let's just hope they don't ruin it with the cash shop. Yeah. Next up this week, we had the reveal of Tom Clancy's XDefiant, an upcoming free-to-play multiplayer first-person arena shooter that combines realistic gunplay with hero classes. The game will pull from the Clancy universe by taking place in some well-known locations and featuring 4 of its iconic factions. We will play as Defiants, which are basically classes that are themed around those factions, and we will get to select our own traits, abilities, weapons, and even ultras, and then use those to compete in a variety of 6 vs 6 game modes. All of this, according to Ubisoft, will combine these intense firefights with punk rock mosh pits. What? Right out the gate, reception to this thing has been very poor. Both videos they released around the game's reveal were completely dislike bombed and had some pretty savage comments. As for my thoughts, the game looks fine. I know Ubisoft gets a lot of flack, but I've enjoyed many of their multiplayer and competitive titles over the years. For Honor, Rainbow Six Siege, and The Division are all some of my favorite games from last generation, so I'm certainly willing to give this thing a look. I think the big problem here is just the game's presentation. It's very, how do you do, fellow kids, with this corporate feeling take on bright neon spray paint punk rock styling. And the fact that they're trying to use the Tom Clancy name, just why? To my recollection, Clancy was never about bright colors, tattoos, and mohawks. it's clearly being done to cash in on the name alone, and for that reason, the tone feels a little off. Now, of the game's look and direction, the executive producer Mark Rubin said, "We wanted to make a game that had at its core a strong expectation of quality around gameplay. Movement, aiming, shooting, etc. all needed to feel grounded and realistic, but also smooth and reactive. And we felt that matched up really well with the Clancy universe. But we wanted to bring a different take on the attitude that is normally associated with Clancy, and I think you can even see that in our title. The XDefiant logo is really in a kind of irreverent and rebellious take that we think flips the normally serious Clancy vibe." And he's right. Putting an XD smiley face in your Tom Clancy Games logo is fairly irreverent to what people expect from the franchise, and I think the game's reception so far mirrors that irreverence. Now, with all of that said, let's take a look at some details about the game itself. We got a few interesting notes from a developer interview. So players will be able to mix and match any faction and weapon loadouts while also being able to swap at respawn to adapt to matches. So there are the 4 factions that we mentioned, each of them themed around different play styles. The Wolves are tanks, Cleaners, Assault, Outcast, Healers, and Elyon is support. So if there's a specific ability or ultimate that you think will help your team win, you can swap to another Defiant at any time. But they say, even though the game does have classes with these abilities, it is a shooter first. Realistic gunplay is a top priority. The game will have a relatively fast time to kill and features an ever-growing arsenal of authentic weapons and attachments that they put a lot of care into the look and feel of. I can imagine here they're probably drawing heavily on the work that was done as well for Rainbow Six Siege. I don't know how realistic any of those weapons were, but from the gameplay perspective, I always thought that it felt pretty good. Maps in XDefiant will pull inspiration from prior Clancy games being set in familiar locations. There are going to be 10 maps available in an upcoming test, 7 arena and 3 linear, and then each of those types will also have multiple game modes for us to play. The presentation and marketing of this thing aside, I imagine the game will be decent based on my prior experience with Ubisoft multiplayer games. It's a competitive shooter. It's going to have some Clancy theming. The XD stuff is, whatever, but I could see myself enjoying this game from my past experience and just from what they've shown. Now, testing for XDefiant will be starting on August 5th for PC players in the US and Canada, and they say that they're going to be relying heavily on community feedback. I wonder if they're regretting that now based on the feedback so far. But yeah, if you're interested, you can sign up for a chance to test the game over on their website. The year of the MMO continues to roll on as more new games inch closer to release, and Elyon is one of those upcoming titles. Now, I haven't spoke much about this game here on the channel, but it seems somewhat promising. It won't be breaking any new ground, probably won't take the Western market by storm, but it could potentially get itself a decent player base. So the game originally went by the name Ascent Infinite Realm, and it didn't look particularly great when it was first revealed, but after going through a big revamp, which include an overhaul to the game's combat and the name change, based on feedback that I've seen, apparently it's not awful. The game has an action combat system that looks to draw a lot of inspiration from what Terra did, and is going to offer a big variety of PvE and PvP content. Now, I haven't played Elyon myself, but according to some of the coverage that I saw from Lazy Peon, the new combat system apparently feels good. It has a nice variety in terms of the character creation, and there are no gender-locked classes. There's a good mix of PvP with arenas, battlegrounds, open world, and realm versus realm, and on the PvE side, there are dungeons, raids, world bosses, and player housing, and apparently it runs pretty well and is decently optimized. In terms of the bad stuff, apparently it runs well and is decently optimized because it looks like garbage. The game looks super dated. It's running on Unreal Engine 3. Apparently also, the leveling is pretty boring. There's loads of boring grinding, and like a lot of Korean MMOs, it's got a very overly busy user interface and is likely going to be pretty pay to win. So it seems like one of those MMOs that you could have fun with for a little while, but won't have much long-term appeal for people looking for that. You should also realize that the game, again, is almost certainly going to be pay to win. That is the case for many games from this region. region, and it looks like they're lining up here with that as well. They recently revealed their cash drop plans, and it doesn't sound particularly great. But if you are interested in at least trying the game out, registration for the closed beta is available now, and the dates of that beta will be announced sometime very soon. They recently also revealed that the game is planned to launch early fall 2021. Next up, we've got Tennocon. This is the yearly celebration and reveal event for Warframe. Well, that took place last week, and like everything with this game, it was cool looking and also a little weird. Character models in this game are so strange. They've always they're something else. Anyway, in terms of new announcements, there were a few pretty interesting things. For one, the game is coming to mobile, and they are finally adding cross-platform play. So players will be able to team up with friends and matchmake across all platforms that Warframe is on: PC, PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, and sometime soon, mobile as well. They're also going to be adding cross-platform saves, so you can seamlessly, say, jump between playing on the PC, and then if you got to run, you can switch to your phone or the Switch device. Even though I don't really mobile game ever myself, I do think these sort of features are really, really cool. But the event had more than just news about platforms. They also revealed some gameplay for the upcoming update titled New War, which they are calling their most ambitious cinematic quest yet. This update centers around a massive new war breaking out as old enemies return to the Warframe galaxy. But what's really interesting is the gameplay they showed. It looks like we're going to get to play as some of the basic enemy troops in the game. I think they're called Grenier and Corpus, if I'm remembering correctly. And what I liked about this is it's not the crazy Tenno Warframes zipping around the map, doing barrel rolls and AoEing everything in sight. No, it looks to be much slower paced third-person shooter gameplay, which funny enough is how I like to play Warframe every time I revisit the game, at least to start. I think the game has such a good look to it that I kind of enjoy meandering around and not going 1,000 miles per hour through the levels. I know it's not the right way to play Warframe if I'm trying to optimize and grind stuff as soon as possible. I get it, but something about that playstyle I've always enjoyed. So this update appearing to lean more heavily in that direction sounds pretty good to me as a variety and way to mix things up. So the New War update will be launching later this year. I haven't seen a release window, but apparently that'll be coming in the next couple of months. And then lastly, for big stories this week, I did want to touch on this Blizzard lawsuit. It's been all over the internet, so I'm sure most of you have heard about this by now, but in case you haven't, Blizzard is being sued by the state of California for what they say is a discriminatory and toxic work environment for female employees. The claims and allegations of this case, gathered over the course of a 2-year investigation, are pretty unsettling to read and also extremely disappointing. The fact that it's the state bringing this to court also tells me they're pretty confident in their findings, be it the accuracy or simply sheer volume of reported incidents. Now, like I said, there's been a lot of coverage of this case, and I suspect there are many better voices out there that you should listen to when it comes to discussion of this particular topic. Personally, I really appreciated the videos I saw from Hazelnutty and Zeppla HQ. I thought their coverage was well thought out and on point, so I would suggest you check out their videos. But on a personal note, this sort of thing is very, very sad to hear. I'm pretty empathetic to people dealing with bullshit. I don't like dealing with it myself. In fact, a major draw for me in doing YouTube in the first place was just getting to work from home and not work around people and having to deal with the crap that some of those people will bring to the work environment. And the things that I've had to deal with pale in comparison to the sort of things that you'll read about in this case. It's just really shitty, man. Would be great if it didn't happen, but it does, and so we have to talk about it and we have to deal with it. Yeah. But now, back to video games, I guess. How do you transition, huh? A couple of other quick things that I wanted to mention before we wrap this whole thing up. I do want to tell you that this coming Tuesday, July 27th, we're going to be getting the big reveal event for Guild Wars 2's End of Dragons expansion. There's going to be a pre-show starting at noon. That's going to go for a couple of hours, and then the big reveals will be happening at 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. They're going to be showcasing expansion features, a new trailer, details on the story and setting, elite specialization, notifications, some information about the beta, along with developer interviews and a bit more. All of this sounds really good to me. I've been playing a bit of Guild Wars 2 recently and really enjoying it. And then also I want to tell you about this online mech shooter. It's called Galahad 3093. This is a mech game. It reminds me a lot of the ones that I used to play as a kid, and I just think it looks kind of cool. You know, I don't know if this is going to be any good or not, but I want to tell you about this because they're currently having an open beta from now until August 1st. You just have to go to their Steam page to request access. I hope some people jump in, and I hope I hear this thing is good. I don't know if I'm going to have time to jump in because I'm still obsessed with New World. So I'll probably be playing that for most of the week. But there you go. That is the wrap up of all of this week's biggest gaming news. Appreciate you guys stopping by, watching the video. As always, hope you enjoy the content. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your support. And I'll see you in the next one, all right? Take it easy.